Welcome to Health and Self-Care Summit for Women, and I'm your host, Angies Journey, and today I will be interviewing Frankie Finn. And he's a renewed international speaker and entrepreneur and master of the mystical art. He has been featured in the magazine, radio show, and podcast. He actually works with plant medicine, so I'm really excited to have him here, and I want him to share how that plant medicine can be used for us as a women, as like a part of our self-care, and also, working on ourselves and healing the trauma. So why don't we start from here?
Well, hello, Angie, and everybody.
Hello.
Thank you so much for having me.
So yes, please tell us, what you're working with and what is that and how to go about this, and just give us some more information.
Yeah, okay. Well, firstly, Angie, it's thank you for bringing such an amazing topic together, women, self-care, health. And really, that's kind of where my journey started, was in those things, because I kind of, in 2012, experienced the most profound life shifts. I had one might type a near-death experience or a mystical experience, and out of it, for me, most grew the biggest period of my life where self-care and my health expanded. So, and I say that not just in a physical sense where I had more energy and slept better and so forth, but I mean that in the sense of mental health as well. So I was dealing with like a deep anxiety and a depression.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like nothing was ever going to work out for me. And I literally, in my, first kind of like mystical of these kind of experiences, healed that. And so, what we've been kind of working on is now helping other people with this and seeing the amazing results it can do for other people. And we've had some people that have had, health issues mentally with like their relationship with money, or
Mm-hmm.
just feeling lonely and really trying to find a partner. And as well, sometimes the problems are very, very physical, like it hurts every time I do this. But regardless of what brings people to it, is we've seen these kind of like really miraculous healings that take place in people that
Mm-hmm.
just leave them forever altered. And I think it's for that reason, it's probably the most interesting of self-care and health topics.
Yeah, definitely. And especially with people who have been through so much trauma, right? And the people who struggle with depression and anxiety and just not being present in the body even, I think that this is super helpful. I mean, that's how it was helpful for me. So would you want to share what are you working with? What kind of plant, and what is your main focus?
Yeah, so the setting, the people you do with it, whether they're trained professionals, I learned almost through trial and error, but it's many ways the most important thing. And the plants we specifically work with are magic mushrooms and edible cannabis, which a lot of people don't know. You can get into deep states, but it's really, really interesting when you actually learn this stuff. It's way less about the plant than most people realize, and it's about like the state the person administering, sets for you that allows you to go deep. Because, in a normal self-care setting, for example, you have, if you have people in your space, for you to meditate, you have to trust those people. You have to be able to relax around them. If you're surrounded by some muggers on the subway, sure, you could probably meditate and do some self-care, but it's probably not going to work. And so a really, really big part of it is starting in such a beautiful, amazing space that it allows people to really let go of those things you talked about, like the traumas. And when I say traumas, I mean like real traumas that people live through, whether that's, seeing rapes and car accidents and, all kinds of horrible things that, unfortunately is just part of life. But being able to like move past that and heal from it. And I think it's just so exciting that we get to talk about this today.
Yeah, and I think I feel like it's very, very helpful for people struggling with, complex PTSD, right?
Yeah.
And the complex PTSD doesn't have to be just, from the veterans have them, right? But this is like trauma from childhood, and like even physical abuse and neglect. It's huge. So they both, like physical abuse and neglect, they're kind of on the same vein, right? For you can develop complex PTSD from that trauma from childhood. So I feel like the magic mushrooms and the cannabis is super helpful for releasing that trauma, and kind of actually find also a way to work with that triggers, from with those flashbacks. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, and you hit the nail on the head there, because the biggest thing that I see people dealing with is those flashbacks. And when you have those, if you've ever experienced them for whatever your trauma is, in that moment, it is very, very real and happening now, even though that experience may be from 10 years ago, but in that moment in your body. So for example, like a trauma I really experienced, I had a sports injury. I broke my shoulder playing hockey, and as a result, it's popped out a bunch of times. And so in my experience, every now and then when I just lean over, I feel like a sudden kind of thing like that. And these are the real traumas and things that people deal with. And a lot of times they don't realize is that, the plant medicine can really change that entire relationship with whatever it is you're dealing with, whether, yours is more psychosomatic, if something really awful happened to you, or, it's quite physical in your body. Regardless, is that, there's a way to move on from those traumas. And as a result, like really, really, truly let it go. And when I say let it go, I mean let it go to the point where you don't even relate to the person who used to have that anymore, where you almost think of it in the same way that you might after you just watched a really good movie, where it's interesting and it's compelling, but you're no longer sucked into what that character is doing. And so, you almost look at it like a very kind of distant memory. And when you reach those states past your trauma, that's when life really begins to be fun, because you learn that there is real healing available, and that, it's not just limited to the one area of your life you're trying to fix. You can bring it to all these things. And suddenly, there becomes more time for self-care and the things that are really important, spending time with family or whatever that is for you. So I think it's obviously I'm excited about the topic. It's just
Yeah, and I mean, like from my own experiences and my friends and people who work with plant medicine, is just like for most of them, that's when the healing happened, when then that big opening, the profound opening happened. And from there, people went in different directions, right? And took different directions, and like started, to eat better and start to feel better, start to exercise, and, went for healing somewhere else also, and went to therapists and things like that. So I feel like for me, it was like I needed this kind of experience. I needed this deep, profound experiences to kind of release that trauma and open up to different possibilities,
Yeah, I mean, it's in some ways, some people are built where they can chip away and work at things and, make their lives better. But some people like you and me need to just be like really shook. And I'm not one of these people that thinks everybody in the world should go out and try and do plant medicine. I actually feel like it's more like the right people just know it. You feel called to it. There's like a really deep curiosity. There's all these questions you've been asking that you don't necessarily have answers to, and all the ways you've been looking for one reason or another don't satisfy it. But for those people that kind of are looking for that kind of healing, it really does shake you out of it, of whatever you've really been stuck at for a long time. So for me personally, and we've had a lot of the people that, our clients and so forth that have had similar things, where for me, I had a depression and anxiety for many, many, many years, to the point where I didn't even know life without it. Like, it was just how it colored my reality. I had a messy childhood. Both my parents were alcoholics. And for me, like, just crazy drunken fights were just part of everyday life. And you never quite knew how to be around drunk people, because one minute they're happy, the next reason they're angry and telling you, and, you're the worst person in the world. And it's a, that was like, that kind of drama was really normal for me. But I didn't realize as I, became an adult and tried to live life, that everything I did was colored by that. And I remember actually the exact moment in my ayahuasca experience, the first time I had like a really big, profound change, is that I can remember the exact moment I let it go, and I literally have not, had it since. And suddenly when that didn't color everything in my reality, there were all these little things that I started doing. Like one of the habits is like we juice vegetables every morning. And it's, for me, I like starting the day by doing like something incredibly loving to myself physically, the best I can do. And we set up all the stuff the night before so we don't have to think about it. It's just there on the counter. It takes us like 5 minutes and we get to do something really amazing. And you start to become like really purposeful in all these like really good habits. But the deeper thing that's really going on that creates the habit is just learn to love yourself, like really love yourself. And you start doing loving things to yourself. And it's amazing when those are the seeds that we plant inside of ourselves. And you know, for most of us, there's so many influences that are working the other direction. Like, you know, if you think about the news sends people to scour the globe and find the worst shit about humanity that's ever existed. Right. And then report at it as if this is what a normal day looks like for everybody. And so there's like, you know, all this negativity and limiting ideas and beliefs that, you know, not always, you know, in a malicious way. Often they're just, you know, your parents say, what do you think we are, made of money? Or, you know, they may criticize a person's weight or something like that. It's not always, you know, malintended, but it's like these things like color your reality. And when you let them go, all of a sudden all these self-loving habits fill in, and it starts to like really change all the little pieces of your life. And it's not really one thing. It's like, you know, you end up having like, in a lot of ways, just 1,000 ways you just upgrade little pieces of your life. But together what they make is all of a sudden, you know, health becomes your baseline, and the PTSD and those things don't have to be part of the reality anymore. In fact, you often want to, very next thing you want to do is pay it forward and help other people who are going through that, because you remember how awful it was and how they don't need to go through it. And so sometimes, like, when you suddenly feel whole, the first thing you want to do is give wholeness to somebody else, because you remember how long and how difficult the road it was when you felt broken. And, you know, these are some of the things that happen out of these experiences. And again, it's not for everybody. I'm not saying it's this miracle wonder drug, because it is real. Once you see the changes you need to make, like, you really got to, you know, make choices and do those things. But when you do it, it's such a profound, positive, life-changing thing.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, it's not for everybody. And like you said before, that, you know, people are just being called to that, and they try it out and see, you know, if it works for them. So could you share like what kind of experiences people can have, you know, doing medicine plant?
Yeah, and so I should put the asterisk on it is there's two parts to every plant medicine experience. There's the plant that you take. I guess there's really three parts. There's the plant you take. There's, you know, the shaman holding the space, or the lack of one. People do it, and, you know, you're kind of set and setting for it. And as well, there's you. And because there's that you, and you can never fully remove that you piece, you always bring something unique to the plant experience. So no two experiences are exactly alike. Having said that, there's a lot of commonalities. You know, one of the things that I personally experienced, and I don't want to like try and force any religious belief on anybody. That's not my intention. I'm just sharing what I personally experienced. Mm-hmm. You know, if it suits you, take it on. If it doesn't, feel free to just, you know, disagree. Mm-hmm. But having said that, like, for me personally, I had like a total profound mystical experience where I experienced what I could only describe as just an unending, infinite, loving creation that just went on in every single way, and became it, and it went through in every direction. And, you know, there was a point in the experience where I felt like I knew everything that ever happened and why, and it just like answered every question for me. And I actually remember when I came back down after the first time, I was like, I know everything. And then I forgot like 5 minutes later, and I was like, oh, I just remember. But what you find is like those little pieces of memories come back to you slowly, and you integrate more and more, and you remember it. And, you know, so those were some of the things that happened for me. And I also met like really profound beings that I had only like imagined. Like I remember I had a Christ experience in my visions, and I had like, I remember the first time it happened, and there was this very Jesus looking guy, and it was really outside of like a religious context. It was just this like loving Christ entity. And I remember thinking, the first thought was, you don't really look like that. If you're like really this Christ, why would you look like this Jesus guy from religion? And communicated to me and said, but if I could take any form, but if I didn't pick one you would recognize it, and how would you know it was me? And I said, okay. And so I remember I asked him a question that had been really troubling me at that point in my life. And I remember the Jesus went to me and said, all of a sudden we were sitting under a tree, and he said to me, I've been meditating for 1,000,000 years knowing you were going to ask me this question. Yeah.
Wow.
I remember laughing, thinking, nobody meditates for 1,000,000 years. And then in my mind, it flashed that he really had been meditating for 1,000,000 years. And I started, like in my mind, I started like crying. I still get a little choked up thinking about it now, but it was just such a loving thing to know that somebody had been thinking about my well-being in such a deep and profound way, beyond anything I could have imagined. And I remember I asked the question and I got the answer. And then it immediately led to another question. And then I asked the second question, and then it led to a third and a fourth. And finally, after like 25 questions or something like that, I'm like, oh, well, I guess that answers everything, right? I was at least satisfied for the moment. And he looked at me, he was like, that's why I meditated for 1,000,000 years, because I knew when I answered the first question, you were going to have the second and the third. And so I had to figure out an answer that would answer all 25 questions at once. But I think we finally got it. And then, left the experience. But, it's certainly the beings that you only read stories about, you get a chance to really interact with those things and feel what they're really about and experience it firsthand without to believe any sort of religious ideology. And that's the beautiful thing is you can have these experiences, and if you want to keep your religion exactly as it is, you're perfectly free to do so, right? It's just, but if the experience in a way shows you a deeper truth and you decide, now this is more true for me now that I have this greater understanding, you can do that too, but there's there's nothing you have to do with it. And that's just kind of amazing. But the big takeaway from that experience that's kind of possible, at least, sharing my own personal experiences, I really got answers to questions that had just been on my mind forever. And they were very real world and practical. It's like, I think my first question was like, Jesus, how do I get clients? I'm struggling in this business right now. And it was just like, oh, you just got to do that. And I was like, what if I do that? What about this? And what about this? And eventually led into this big, profound spiritual truth, which, but the solutions you're looking for are very real world and practical and applicable to your own life. So that's the most amazing thing I think about it is that it really helps you in the real world,
Yeah, I totally agree, because you can set an intention and before the ceremony, and you can set an intention on what you want to work, and that doesn't mean that necessarily that is going to take you there, but when you set an intention, usually you'll find some answers, right? Yeah, I remember myself having my first experience with plant medicine. It was so profound because my trauma comes mostly from my mother's death when I was 9 years old, and I think that I felt this deep pain and despair that my body just me in general, we just couldn't handle it, and I had this vision. I was going down to this cave, and there was a lot of different animals, especially cats, different cats, not the home cats, but the big cats. And so they were keep coming in and out, and then I had those wolves surrounding me, protecting me. And I went to this deep cave, and I heard these voices from those cats. They were saying you don't belong here. It's time for you to leave. Just go. And I was on the way back, those wolves trying to carry me out, and I was making this kind of but how can I live without this? I was so attached to that pain and this despair that I didn't want to leave. And then I remember after that, I'm oh my gosh. And then the next day I felt so amazing and kind of empty and clean. So it was it was deep spiritual, but also kind of a cleansing experience for me. So that was really amazing.
Yeah, you know what I compare that cleansing feeling to? Because when you finally let that go, sharing because that's really deep, and I know a lot of people listening to this are dealing with similar things. And when you kind of let that go, there's always this last minute fear. It's because you've had it for so long, you can't even imagine who you would be. just it's so ingrained into who you are that it's almost scarier not to have it than to have it. And then you finally let it go, and it turns out, oh my God, life's so much easier. Why didn't I do that sooner? Like, it was making everything hard. I was so worried about what I'd be like without it, but everything is like now profoundly better. And there's definitely a period after where I call it like kind of like that after really good sex euphoria, where like for like 10 minutes you just kind of you're just walking on air and everything's good, and you know, you just in your own little world. But when you really have that healing, and obviously life still throws more challenges, and it's not like ever be other things to heal from, but I think in many ways it also gives you tools to be able to handle those better in the future, because once you let go of one really big pain, you know, when another big one comes, you at least know the process that got you out of it in the first time, and you remember what it felt like to be better healed, and you remember what it was like when you finally let go of that attachment, and so you're attached to it the second time, and the whole process is easier, and you don't take it as seriously, and you see it more as a process, and you know, those are some of the amazing things that happen. And trauma is like a really big ugly thing too, because it's also like, it's not really socially acceptable to tell people, I just had a flashback in the middle of our work. I'm having a mini panic attack inside my head. You know, it's just really, mental sickness is not seen the same way as like a physical sickness. You know, if you tell people my knee hurts, you know, they'll say, oh, you know, let me get you some ice, or have you gone to the doctor or something like that. But if you say, I feel totally insane here, they'll say, get back to work, right? So
people scared. I find that people are mostly scared, and there's a lot of people are also very disconnected. They just like, oh, you know, I have so much to deal with myself. I don't know if I'm like open to deal with someone else's issues like that, you know. Like the physical pain is visible, or like, oh, I can get this, I can get that, you know, but this is like, oh, I don't know, you know. So
yeah, and on top of that, I would also add, which everything you said is totally spot on, is that I think there's a sense of being vulnerable. Like if you tell people, you know, for example, like I mentioned earlier, like I grew up around alcoholics, and my parents, you know, just like crazy shit was going on all the time in my childhood. To me, that was very normal until I kind of like outgrew that and thought, you know, that's not how life is supposed to be. But a lot of people, you know, listening to this, as well have, and those are things that really affect people. Like, you know, if you're told you're not good enough by your parents, or that you don't have enough money, like, you know, those things ingrain your personality. And so trauma takes like all kinds of these shapes and form, and I think most people have it in one form or another, but what most people are lacking are the tools to be able to really do anything about it. So I think what you're doing is really amazing for that. This whole summit, and not just, you know, having me personally, but just a whole spectrum of experts to help people get over what, you know, is really in many ways the stuff that really holds people back from being the life they really want, really experiencing that. Because, you know, for example, like if somebody's trying to grow a business and they've been told their whole life there's not enough money, then it's going to be really hard to do that. And when you let that go, life gets a lot easier. If somebody, you know, had a rape experience, it's going to be probably a lot harder to enjoy their own sexuality freely, because, you know, there's always guilt and shame around that. And so having the tools to be able to process that, and process that quickly, and not have to have it just like kind of kick your ass is so needed in this world.
Yeah, and I agree. You know, usually when I think that when you heal, and when you actually finally figure it out what it is and what's happened, and oh my gosh, I was struggling with this, and this is, and you name it, it's kind of easier to overcome it. And when you get the tools, I feel like for me, was getting and having the tools were the most important part of all the healing too. Because yes, I can go and have the spiritual experience, and then, but you know, I have to bring this to my regular life, you know. So I need to have those tools, like to know, like when I'm in a flashback, I just need to like tend myself and say, oh, just Angie, just relax, you're just in a flashback, you know, this will go away. Or like if you have different tools and someone can give you to work with, you know, and that I find is like very, very important. So Would you say, like, what kind of setting would you, like, in what kind of setting would you do this kind of healing?
Well, I can only speak about what we do personally. It's really just a space of like shamans who are trained to do this kind of thing, as well as people who are there to help support you physically, because, sometimes like, this is a reality. If you're on a high amount of a substance and you suddenly need to go to the bathroom, you're not able to. It's really nice to have somebody who's just there to help you and bring you in a non-judgmental kind of like nurse way, as well as just being really physically comfortable and knowing that you're loved and guided and healed and supported. So I think if anything that fits that kind of overall intention, for me anyway, and I think most people, I would advise the same, to do it that kind of way. And what you said was really spot on, because it's not actually, everybody thinks what you want is to have this like really cool, amazing, life-changing experience. And certainly that's an interesting part of it. And when it happens, it'll be the most interesting thing that ever happened in your life to that point.
Right.
But the tools that you get out of it, and to give you like a real example, the first ayahuasca ceremony I had, they gave me, the shamans I work with, they gave me they're known for having the strongest ayahuasca in the jungle, and they made the biggest version of it. And ayahuasca is already considered like this world's strongest hallucinogen. So in many ways, I took the strongest dose from the strongest provider of the strongest substance. And so like, it was so intense beyond anything I could have imagined that like in every way possible, I was like, I actually remember, in the literature when they talk about it, they say it takes an hour to kick in. And I was like almost gone 3 or 4 minutes into it. And I was like, whoa, if it's that 3 or 4 minutes into it.
Wow.
And I have like hours and hours and hours to go, like, whoa. And it's a sense of like, when you just feel like you got on a roller coaster and now you realize there's no getting off the roller coaster. And at some point in the ceremony, I actually had this really kind of strange but funny experience where I had this anxiety, and I remember I sang kind of in my mind telepathically to the ayahuasca. I was like, why do I have this anxiety? And that's a whole lesson in itself, because it really like kind of kicked my ass for like 45 minutes. And after that, I remember asking like, why are you doing this to me? And it said, you asked why you have anxiety. And I said, well, I want to be rid of it. Isn't that what I need to ask to be rid of it? And it just looked at me and was like, fuck no, right? It's funny because I understand now that the spirits come from this, the things you see in the vision, they come from parts of your own mind. So they have to use your personality to relate to you. So they may not swear to you. They did to me. Suddenly I felt this anxiety like bubble up into like what felt like a planetary sized mass, almost like one would feel if they were pregnant. And I had to go to the bathroom more urgently than I'd ever had to go in my life. And I actually remember praying on the way. I was like, please, somebody don't be in the bathroom. Like, I really need to go. Please, God. Like, and luckily there's an abundance of bathrooms. I think that's an important part of the ceremony.
Right.
And I got in there and I remember I couldn't go. And, it was just the spirits say really funny.
Like, I can't get rid of this anxiety. How funny. I mean, this is interesting, huh?
And, but what ended up happening the next night, all of a sudden we had to drink ayahuasca again. We were doing it for like, I don't know, a bunch of days in a row. And I was suddenly like terrified because I remember how intense it was. And I was like, whoa, like the gravity of what I was about to do, like really set in. And I was like, now you know. And all of a sudden the anxiety came back for a moment. And I heard this voice that said, hey, relax. Just take a deep breath. And I went, and I went, now what? And it went again. And I went, and then I went, now what? And I said, do that 100 more times. So I literally did like 100 breaths in a row. And then eventually what I found is that I didn't suddenly magically heal, but my anxiety went from like a 10 out of 10 terrified to like a 9. And then I could maybe move it to an 8. Then I could get it to a 7, and then it would go back to an 8 for a minute. I'd hear some scary thought. But eventually I got it down to like a 2 or a 3. And I thought, oh, this is fine. I can manage this. I feel relaxed. And I went and took it when I was relaxed. And then I had a vision of that whole like kind of anxiety situation later But the very next time I was in my real life and I felt anxiety bubble up in me like it used to do, I just went, hey. And all of a sudden the experience of it for me, instead of being this, like when I would have an anxiety or panic attack, it would last for like 3 weeks. And I'd be like, oh my God, what am I going to do about this? And I'd just be like in this stressed, hyped up, like anxious state for like a really long time. And now all of a sudden what felt like was about to be an anxiety attack lasted 3 seconds. And I realized that it was the tools I was lacking all along to deal with that. And that's why I think what you said is so powerful, because it's being able to deal with it in your everyday real life. And I remember, like, when anxiety comes on, the last thing you want to do is start listening to your thoughts, how crazy you are. You want to just breathe and like chill out. And it's those simple tools that you learn how to be able to do in the moment, but they're really life-changing, because when you no longer are all of a sudden freaked out and afraid or whatever that trauma is for you, you can face life in a much more just calm and chilled out way. And then suddenly things start going your way, because you don't bring scared, crazy, wild energy to it anymore. You bring calm, relaxed, certain energy, and all of a sudden, like, life flows in the direction of your calmness and your certainty.
Right. Yeah, that's what I've noticed, that a lot of those healing just helps me to actually bring myself into the body, and just kind of, because I'm on the anxious side too, and there's always anxiety of some kind. So having those tools and actually bring myself into my body is just the most important. Be present is the most important part of it. So I want to ask you one more question. Do you actually have to prepare? So what do you have to do before you go to that ceremony? Do you have to prepare like nutritionally? What do you have to cleanse, or do you have to eat certain food, or can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's only a couple of things that are like big no-nos that would tell us, if somebody's interested in doing that, would probably stop them. One is anxiety medication. Plant medicine and anxiety medication just do not go together. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in this, probably the hardest thing you'll have to do is weaning off of that stuff. We've had some people who do that. But for the most part, if you're with, the right kind of place, like, where I learned this down in the jungle, or with our own retreats as well, a big part of what we do is already preparing that for you. So yes, those things are necessary, but we don't leave that in your hands to have to think about. So all your food is prepared for you. It's already friendly. Okay. So for example, like alcohol and things that just don't really work well with plant medicines, they're just not really available to you for that week. And so, all the things provided for you are the things you need, the healthy diet and so forth. So yes, you do need to prepare, but if you're, at the right kind of space, that's already been kind of thought through. If you are thinking of doing it on your own, I've done it both on my own and with like professionally trained shamans. It's not an experience I wouldn't suggest it, but if you are one of those people who's going to do it anyway, then what I would say is, avoid really chemical and processed things, like from a nutrition standpoint, because they can make your experience really difficult and uncomfortable and scary and dark. And it's way easier just to put good, healthy stuff in your body. And you don't have to carry this as a habit for the rest of your life, but especially on the day you're going to do it, like, respect the plants, because you don't know it until you have it. But if you ever have like a dark, kind of scary, never-ending trip, you'll really regret it. And it's just so much easier just to eat a little bit healthy in the morning and prepare for it and have something nice and pleasant happen to you, than it is to deal with the consequences when you're in it and you feel like you're going insane and going crazy and there's no way out of it, which happens to people. We've had to help people, not necessarily even at like our retreats. We actually have like a YouTube channel, for example. Sometimes people just stumble on our YouTube channel and go, I'm freaking out, man. And it's like, well, what did you do ahead of time? And you have to like kind of bring them down. And it's like, you would much rather not be in that kind of space in the first place. And so nutrition is probably the single most important thing. And then the second thing is do everything you can to prepare yourself mentally. There's a certain part of you that you can never be prepared, because the experiences are just, when you go into these quantum infinite states and you see how much bigger life really is, there's no amount of reading books or anything that will ever prepare you for it. But what you can prepare is getting yourself relaxed and calm and in the best possible space that you can be. And that means if you're still feeling anxious or worried or whatever, or excited, that's okay. Like, that's normal. But, just get yourself into the best state that you can be going into it, whatever that is for you the moment. and the experiences themselves will reflect that back to you in a better way.
Yeah, great. Well, that has been great. And maybe, do you want to share what you're doing about your business, and if you have something to offer for our listeners? And yeah.
Yes. So if you like this stuff and you're interested in that, what we actually do is, by the way, we help people who are doing this in a business sense, because one of the things I mentioned is when you find your wholeness and you heal yourself, the very next thing you always want to do is give that to somebody else, and whatever thing has most. And so we have helped people build those kind of businesses using sacred plants, and usually they want to like travel the world with kind of laptop lifestyles at the same time. So that's our business, is doing sacred plant retreats for those kind of people. If that's you, we have an amazing free training. And even if you're not interested in those things, the free training is really cool. I think you'll like it anyway. It's at sacredplantretreats.com/register. And when you go there, there's a just quick email sign up. And then the free training is 39 minutes. It is about really getting you clear about what I think is the most important thing, which is finding your life purpose. Because when you find that, you'll always heal, and you'll always live a better life, and you'll find more contribution and all the things that are really worthwhile. So if you're looking to do something, if you have that feeling inside of you that says, like, I know I was meant for more, you probably were. That feeling's not there by accident. So that training will be amazing for you. So if that's you, check it out.
Great. And where does this retreat take place?
We do our retreats in the Netherlands, and a big part of that is everything. It's a beautiful place, first world country, and everything's legal there. And I've always felt like obeying the laws is an important part of a plant retreat. Like, the last thing you want to do is do a plant ceremony, be having the most mystical and profound experience of your life, and have to be looking over your shoulder, worried about a police officer. So the Netherlands is a beautiful place for that, because everything is legal, it's beautiful, and we have an amazing setting. We bring everybody together in a beautiful, like, mansion-y style setting, so you get to experience it in real style.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I hope that my listeners enjoyed that and took a lot of good inputs from it. And I'm glad that I had you, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you. Bye.